Hello, everyone. It is me. I'm a nerd politics. Sorry, I've been gone for what feels like probably a month. I've been busy, and I'm going to be even more busy. This is probably the last video you'll see from this year. Got a lot of stuff going on in life, and that's kind of where I'm leaving that at. But this is kind of a final conclusion to the 2024 election. Um, as you may have seen in the last video, usually around August, September, and October, the three final months before the election is resulted and finalized, usually the percentages based on Democratic candidates usually um, seem to be like over high, like, oh my God, the Democrats couldn't have a better landslide if they could even imagine, right? Like, it always has favored Democrats having this huge landslide election. And it's been like that since 1988 with Dukakis, because Ronald Reagan had a landslide election that was not even thought to be possible. I'm sorry, I put that Donald Trump accent. Like, it was like a 525 to 10, like, or not 10 but like 13. So after that point, the 1988 election comes up, and they're thinking Democrats are going to win if we just tell them random numbers that are way above everything. And it's basically been like that for Democrats since 1988 with Dukakis. And sure, you could say that, Ross Perot in there a little bit as well, but that was only really during the 90s. But Donald Trump even posted on his YouTube community page today, where it shows in the general improvement rating, Donald Trump is 61% to Kamala Harris's 35%. Like, the numbers speak for itself. If you do your own research and come up with your own conclusions, that's what people are looking at here. I don't want random numbers that are just thrown up because everyone's worried, oh my God, if this person doesn't win the election, we're screwed. We don't know that. We don't know until the person's there, right? We've proven it with Biden. Biden has the worst reputation of hate by amongst several different politicians in the last 50 years. Should have been obvious. Kamala Harris is hated and has been. She was recognized as one of the most liberal senators, one of the most liberal lawyers, one of the most liberal, like, downright more socialist than Bernie Sanders as a vice president. And even when she ran against Joe Biden in the 2020 primary, she was not only the first to drop out of the race, but she was also recognized as the most socialistic candidate on the debate. But now everyone wants to praise her as if she's this good going forward person who's going to make America good. She's not. She picked a horrible running mate, Tim Walz, who not only lied about his military experience, and I'm not saying that he didn't have military experience. I'm aware that he was in the military for over 20 years, but he wasn't on the field. He lied about being on the field because it gives him political gain, and it gives people the interest that he's the better man because he fought for everyone's life. No, he didn't. He was in military experience. He had experience, but not on the field. He's a liar for political gain. He's also a liar about the governing state he has. His home state is Nebraska, but his governing state is Minnesota here. And as I've said through all my videos, I think Minnesota isn't going to be Democrat. I mean, it was almost very. I think Donald Trump back in 2016 only lost Minnesota by like a couple thousand votes. Like, it was still even thin margins then. I don't think Minnesota is going to vote Democrat, especially when you look at Walz, who has allowed people to terrorize the streets of his own governing state and allow places to just burn up, literally people committing arson and committing crimes like none other before. And he's just letting it happen. I mean, for God's sakes, he barely won being reelected as the governor. I think he was at like 52%, almost more than half the people that voted for him or had voted for him don't want him there because they realize that he's done nothing good for the infrastructure of the state or for the people of the state. Literally, deaths, defunding the police, which is what Kamala Harris believes in super strongly. I mean, that's a socialist duo that not even Bernie Sanders could even think was plausible in any way. Because, I mean, why would you want to defund the police? I mean, look at this. Kamala Harris, when she was a lawyer, she would arrest African Americans for having marijuana or having drugs, selling them, stuff that is bad on its own, but use of marijuana, that's something that I think is, whatever, just don't sell it, right? Like illegal selling, bad. But then she would overkeep those African Americans in prison longer than they were expected. But those that were committing murder, robbery, stealing, no, those people got away free willy nilly. And that's not cool. And then you want everyone to say, like, oh, yeah, she supports the African American community because she is an African American. She's not. She is Pakistani, Indian, Canadian, and socialist, right? Like Californian. Like, no, she really in all sorts. She's not African American. She is a mixture of different cultures and different races, but aren't African American, aren't African, of African descent. But anyways, I'm gonna shut up here, and I'm gonna tell you the safe states here. The safe states includes most of the Midwest here, as well as the most part of Nebraska. Um, as I just fill this in here. I'm going to put Ohio in here just because Vance has determined, basically, being that he's the senator of the state, as well as Iowa, because of the primaries that Trump had, that he absolutely crushed everyone else in. So, yeah, obviously put that there. I'm going to put Florida as a safe state. I think over the years, obviously in the early 2000s, we saw that in the 2000 election, especially, that George W. Bush only won like Florida by a couple hundred votes, to a point where I think they had the Congress decide who could win that state, and Florida was ultimately decided as a Republican state, but by very close, thin margins, just unfathomable numbers. And over time, it has come to see that Trump's home state in Florida has gave more appreciation for the Republican Party, and therefore I think Florida is going to be this safe state here, um, as well as the second district of Maine here and Alaska. So that's a 179 already. Kamala Harris doesn't have a lot of safe states, but I'm going to say California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, New York. I'd say the most likely the most part of Maine here. I'd say, yeah, I'm gonna say the second district of Nebraska here is gonna be strong liberal, I think, this time around. And I think most of the states here that are far east, the original 13 colonies, anyways, are going to be standing very more stronger for liberals, as well as Hawaii and DC, of course. So that's a 184. She's just so barely ahead, but not enough to where we still got more to do. Trump's likely state, and I mean like the only state that's likely going to go towards him, is Texas. I think that comes to no surprise, especially after RFK Jr., who dropped out only recently and supported the Republican Party. It's very unlikely for the Kennedys to do that because the Kennedys build a. I've heard the saying in school and such that you could have, liberals, you could have socialists, and you can have patriotic liberals. The idea of a patriotic liberal to me is someone like a Kennedy who cares about America, doesn't care about their own self-interest as the Democratic Party does today. Kennedys did a lot of good, similarly to Republicans, even during that time period, which is why most of them are dead, because that's just how the United States sucks. But over the years, I think RFK Jr. is the only somewhat Democratic candidate that can be slipped through the cracks as more than likely going to stay independent and or Republican, and can be the only exception in that because he regrets his own party, which is something a Kennedy doesn't do. again, most of them are dead, so that's why as well. But I think Texas is going to be strong Republican, or a little bit stronger Republican leaning there. I also think that Nevada and Arizona are going to act the same way. Um, some people are trying to say that there's no way Nevada is this Republican state here. Again, just depends on how you research the data. The research I've pulled, even from 270 and 538, and a couple other places that are mostly independent, as well as some other that are more lenient to Democratic or Republican parties, such as the New York Times and Fox News. They want to say that there's no way Nevada is going to be this Republican winning state because it hasn't been for a long time. But there's no otherwise, you can't just say, oh, well, it hasn't been in a long time, therefore it isn't, right? Like we have to see based off of how many people actually vote. I'm going to say for Kamala Harris's like stronger leaning states would be New Mexico and Colorado. Colorado, my own home state, has had a lot of problems, like politically saying, but I think from all the Democrats over here moving over to this state, it's still strong enough to say that Colorado's not changing anytime soon. I'd also say I'd say New Hampshire is, again, New Hampshire has always been a swing state, so sometimes they go very far right, sometimes they go very far left, and sometimes it's too close to call. I think it's easy to say that New Hampshire is going to be more far left than before, so that's where I'm going with this as well. I'm going to put this actually less. I'm going to say in the middle here with Virginia. Virginia has had a strong rise of Republicans in the last few years, but I don't think it's strong enough yet to influence the state to switch in direction. Now, of course, if this was Biden still running, a lot of more states, possibly Illinois, possibly even maybe New York, even at the at the very least, if Biden was still running, yeah, Trump would win in a huge landslide. We're talking maybe over 400. But with Kamala Harris, she still gives a lot more variety, not only to women, but also to people of color, those who don't actually research her. And of course, you have to look at the fact that most of the African American men in this country will vote for Trump. That's the statistic that 40% of them will. The other 60% won't. But 60% of African American women will vote for Kamala Harris. The other 40% won't. And African American women make up a larger population than African American men in the United States, so she gets the advantage even in the African American vote, but not enough to where the South, where predominantly a lot of people of color stand at, either in the East here or the South here. It's still not enough to have an influential change on that by any means. So the next thing, I'm gonna also put that with Michigan. Michigan has always been, again, a part of that blue wall thing where I've talked about, where it's Wisconsin here, Michigan, Pennsylvania being these blue wall states, never switching back, only doing so in the 2016 election, and then going back in 2020. But Michigan is the only state that, for right now, has proven that they are still blue. They're still not really changing. Now that could really change because the DNC recently just happened, and what a joke that was. The only part I really enjoyed was Barack Obama because I don't like his administrative work, but he does give good speeches. No one can deny that. Um, but the thing is that the DNC was kind of that last little boost of hope for Kamala Harris to shapen up and get together. We actually have the first, or technically the second debate for the presidential candidates, but it's really the first new debate for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on the 10th. And of course, CBS News has denied Kamala Harris a lot of helping hands, essentially, which a lot of them included note cards. I'm just going to stop you there. When has there ever been a presidential debate ever where even vice presidential debate even where note cards were needed? Never. That's when even the ones that weren't televised or anything, I would imagine they didn't use note cards because that's just a stupid concept. I mean, I've done speech and debate. I never got to use note cards in the midst of a one-on-one debate. It's all memory. It's all based off the stats you studied that you practice for in your speech so you can give it to the people and argue against it. Using note cards is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Now, what I do understand is when you're writing stuff down in response to what your opponent is saying, that is totally fine because you can use that as a way of like, nope, that's wrong, or maybe you're right, but here's what I'm saying, kind of thing. But note cards is stupid because it means you're not prepared, you're not ready to take on the issues that are necessary for you to be trustworthy to the United States and the people that are making up the United States right now. I mean, if you saw her on her little, one-on-one discussion with Tim Walz on the CNN channel, she was befuddled. She was like, "Oh my God, are these the questions I'm seriously going to answer? I'm going to answer about border patrol and control and such." Like, she's never been to the border. The nearest border she's been to is the entrance to a Taco Bell. Okay, like that's about it. And so, yeah, you're going to talk about issues you don't know because you, as a vice president, hadn't done anything. I mean, the most I've seen her do is talk about how the environment is going to shit. Well, no, no, really? I mean, I'm pretty sure humans have damaged the earth for these, creationist theories 6,000 years just by standing on this planet. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's called Mother Nature, and you can't change what is natural. Move on. That's not an issue where you could delay it or stop it. You just gotta let things happen with the Earth. That's just common sense, right? But she has also done nothing when it comes to politics and her vice presidential uh, moments, I guess, or I wouldn't even say her job. She didn't even do a job. She did like a hobby, where she's like, "Oh, I'm the best vice president." I mean, most of the times I saw her televised, she was talking about like basketball, going to high schools to give speeches, not good speeches, stuff like that. Like, she's taking on issues that she's never combated with before, or if she has, she did a horrible job with it. Like the border situation, or the fact that inflation happened 2 years ago and it happened to ruin a lot of lives in America, especially those that voted for Biden. So she's not ready to take on the questions, and I do believe that the debate on the 10th will further prove more that many states will need to change their mind because they're not going for the right candidate. But that could all change. And with that, I'm going to put Wisconsin as a likely, or not even a likely, like in the middle there kind of state. Just because it seems to be that way. I actually watched Red Eagle Politics, and most of the numbers he was polling, averaging out from 538, and a couple other places like the New York Times even proved that most people from like Iowa or most people from Minnesota are moving to Wisconsin to enhance further chances that Wisconsin's not going to be a Democratic state here. I'd also say leaning very, very lean, like a 1% lead is for Donald Trump, only because I think the assassination kind of gives like an instance, like a memory of, oh my God, it happened here. We got to vote for this guy because it would have never happened to anyone else. That's kind of one way to look at it, I suppose. Um, and also, I'm going to put North Carolina as a likely Republican state. I just think over the years, North Carolina has gone away from being Democrat as it was in the 2008 election and the 2012 election. It's kind of stepping away from that and going more in a Republican direction. And I'd also say Georgia is likely to, or in the middle of flipping back over. I just don't think that Georgia would vote Democrat again just after the spontaneous amounts of events that have occurred in the last 4 years under the current administration. I just don't think it happened. And Minnesota, I'm still going to say this because I think it's true. The amount of destruction that Walz as a governor has committed in that state, if Josh Shapiro was the candidate, Kamala Harris would have a whale of a time more and probably a lot more trust. But no, we have Walz, the guy who's destroying his own governing state and where his own home state, and some of his family don't even like him. And Kamala Harris only has her home state to be, you know, appreciated by. but it doesn't mean that she can just say, "Oh, well, I got this guy from Minnesota, he'll win it." No, no. Usually in times the vice presidential candidate doesn't mean jack shit to the election for the most part. But this is what I'm looking at right here is like a 307 to 231. That's what I'm looking at the final kind of thing being, as well as just September alone. So, of course, if you did enjoy and would like to subscribe, do that. We're almost at 500 subs, which is pretty cool. I'm sorry this is like super like not informational like my other videos. I kind of just have to get this out quickly. So, of course, most people ignore that and still just give me comments on like, "You're such a lying piece of poop because you didn't mention information." Well, maybe if you watch the whole video, you'd actually, maybe hear that from me, but, screw you, I guess, right? I don't care. Leave your opinions of what you think in the comment section down below. You can also subscribe to my other channels in the description down below. And of course, until then, I will see you all in the next political video whenever I come back. Peace out, guys.